You are listening to Two Heels and a Face Wrestling Podcast, a podcast where we believe wrestling is a buffet and there's something there for everyone. Make sure you're following us on all social media such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook under Two Heels and a Face. That's number 2 Heels and a Face. Make sure you check out our website, twoheelsandaface.com.
Era, 2 Heels and a Face.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Heels and a Face Wrestling Podcast. On today's episode, we are re-releasing one of our favorite episodes. I think, Chris, we might do this a few times during the year, right? It's the road to 300.
Yeah, we gotta reminisce a little bit, and highlight those fun episodes and those who, because I think the one that we're about to re-release is one that we definitely look forward into, recording with. And well, I'll, not keep it a secret here, but we're going to be re-releasing Darin Corbin's interview. And Darin Corbin is somebody that it's, fond in our freelance wrestling hearts. And, having him on the pod was one of the highlights. And this was one that you did on your own. It was a solo pod.
It was a solo pod.
Leading the way.
Yeah, I was happy to do it, happy to step in and carry the load for this one. But it was a super interesting conversation. I think it flowed really well. When you watch Corbin for years, right? We've probably been watching him since like 2018, 2017. And then you talk to him in like the year. I think this might have been 2022. We did this episode, or 2023.
It was released April 2022.
Okay. So there's 5 years of stuff to talk, like a lot more than that of stuff to talk about with Corbin at this point. So, and we had never talked to him. We had seen him wrestle a ton of times. There were so many like freelance incidents and history that we go into. It's a very freelance heavy episode. And yeah, I mean, it was easy. He's an easy guy to talk to. He's really good at what he does. So this was effortless, Chris. This was effortless.
And to some of the freelance faithful, like it was also you were able to sneak in there some Jeremy into that conversation. For those who watched freelance for years, Jeremy would be front row, and every time Corbin would come through that curtain and down those steps, they'll definitely have a face off and they'll trash talk. Well, mostly Jeremy will be trash talking Darin Corbin there. And it was just, as I re-listened to the episode, I was like for sure I'm not like I had forgotten about that, but just brought back those memories. Take it home records and the infamous pipe bomb promo.
Yeah.
So a lot of cool little nuggets there that definitely bring back a lot of good times with freelance in that episode in 2022.
Right. Our friend Jeremy, who it's funny to think back on it because we know how good of a good dude Jeremy is. And he has that Facebook group that people still post until this day. But when Corbin would come through the ring or any heel during this era that we talked about, he would go into almost his own persona, and he would turn into this fan that would literally berate these heel wrestlers. And I think some people probably, not us, because I think we knew who he was and we would talk to him before and after shows. But I think if you didn't know Jeremy and you only saw this version of him, you might find him annoying. You might. I could see maybe some of the freelance fans being like, who is this guy who gets super animated? But we never thought that about Jeremy because we know who Jeremy the person is. But
it was all in good fun.
It was all in good fun. It became part of his fan gimmick almost. And I think you'll hear Corbin and I talk about this, but I think that's a huge reason why the crowd turned in Corbin's favor during that pipe promo too, is because of Jeremy's reputation of doing this. Some other notes I took too, I think it was very ironic that, I want to point out that like Potting with Ego is probably going to have Darin Corbin on their podcast at some point this year. So I think this was a good one to re-release because we love this episode, but like let's do it now, and then you can listen to this, and then when Corbin goes on Potting with Ego, you can listen to that too because that'll happen sometime in this year. But it's funny because he's feuding with Pick and Pop when we
Yes.
record this, and now we know him and Coda's history too, just over the blue belt, and now like it'll be an interesting follow up once Potting with Ego has Corbin on to hear about how they feuded, those two people, Coda and Corbin. So I thought that was like kind of just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's and we talk about Corbin pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and how he also had to get creative, right? With the what is it, uh Snapchat, or what was
Yeah, it's Snapped with an
Snap?
ED,
Hmm.
Snapped
Yes.
Chat, where he has like
Um,
this like this like persona where he interviews himself.
yeah. I remember they were pretty funny. I am not sure if he's still. I don't think he's still doing that, right?
I don't know. I feel like he'll pop up on my
On
algorithms every
socials.
now and then with
Hmm.
different stuff. So I feel like he's always got some kind of creative outlet doing something. He definitely still markets himself pretty well, I think.
Yeah, and we get to hear a little bit about why his theme entrance music is what it is, which is the
Dude,
Ariana Grande. And anytime I hear it, no matter where I am, I do think of Darren Corbin.
that's the one thing I forgot about this episode. I think when I was re-listening to it, I was like, okay, I remember that, I remember that, I remember that. I forgot that he only did this for free. He only did the Ariana Grande song for freelance, which
Hmm.
is, and I remember he said, I asked him, you'll hear, I asked him what his other theme was at different places, and I looked it up to like in present day. I looked it up when I was re-listening
Hmm.
to the episode, and I was just like, I'm so glad he uses a Ariana Grande. Like the other one, I just can't. I can't picture it. I can't picture him come. I don't ever want to see him come out to anything else in my head. And if that
Hmm.
means I don't watch any other Darin Corbin matches outside of freelance, then so be it. But it's anything you hear that's not Ariana Grande, it's gonna feel wrong to you if you're a freelance fan. I promise you, it's gonna feel wrong. Just like picturing him coming out to the song he said, I was just like, that just doesn't feel in my soul. It doesn't feel right, you know.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think it's enough of that intro. I think it's time for us to head on to the episode, re-listen or listen for the first time if you haven't. It's definitely a fun one, and I definitely enjoyed it listening to it and re-listening to it. It was unfortunate I was in there, but again, shout out to Charlie for holding it down and conducting a great interview there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Chris. Yeah, this one I think is, although we talk about like some freelance history, I think it's still a pretty timeless episode. If you like Darin Corbin, I think you'll just enjoy this interview and how he answers questions. And yeah, this is like one of my favorites and one of our favorites. So look out, follow Potting with Ego. I'm gonna keep pushing Corbin to like beyond that. I'm gonna keep pushing Alfonso and Coda and Rob to have him on. I think they will. But yeah, so this is the precursor to that. Listen to this. Follow Potting with Ego. You'll get the follow up goodiness, I'm
All
sure.
right,
So
sounds good. Let's do it.
all right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Use in a Face Wrestling podcast. On today's episode, I'd like to encourage you to go listen back to last week's, where we talked to a new up and coming tag team called Pick and Pop. They're wrestling for Freelance Wrestling, Freelance Underground. And the reason why I say that is because the man who is joining me today was his team, or his faction, so to speak, his mates were mentioned on that podcast. I think it's been a long time coming. First, let me say that this is a solo episode. It's just Charlie today. Chris is dealing with some work stuff. And if you've been following us since we've been doing this, 2016, 2017,
you know how many freelance shows we've been to. You've probably listened to our show previews, show recaps. And there is a person, and we've had every name that you can think of regarding freelance, like a Kylie Ray and Isaiah Velasquez, a GPA, et cetera, et cetera. We've had all those people on this podcast. I think it's, I'm embarrassed to say that we have not reached out to this man before, because, and I think we'll get into this conversation, but I think Darin Corbin does belong in that same conversation. So we'll get into that. But first, I'd like to, in terms of freelance, I know Darin Corbin has a whole body of work, Minnesota, other places. I'm not privy to a lot of that. But in terms of the freelance wrestling at the Logan Square Auditorium, this man has created moments. So I'd like to welcome to Two Heels and a Face, Darin Corbin. Darin, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we were able to make this work. Again, like I generally see some of the stuff where a lot of the freelance faithful, like you said, have come through. I look forward to kind of giving my take on freelance and my years that I've been there.
Yeah, I think our conversation's overdue, and I think that's my fault. And I kind of want to get into that as well. Like those names I mentioned can seem at times, and maybe it's just a local thing, but it can seem at times a little bit more top of mind. But I think your freelance resume does hold very strong. It does speak for itself. I have some opening questions that we can get into. That it's not going to be too much like where you were trained and things like that. You probably talked about that a little bit, so I'm going to try to stay a little bit more unique there. First of all, just how have you been doing since like wrestling's kind of gotten back in the full swing? I think like the promotions that we cover now, it's back to every month. It's like Warriors, Zello, Freelance Wrestling, Freelance Underground, et cetera, every month. So like, have you gotten back into that groove fully?
Yeah, a little bit. Like it's just odd. And the reason I say that is because, as you know, like a lot of stuff did cancel in January again. And I think the weirdest part of this whole thing is, if you would have told me that like for a year, in my personal experience, if a year I would not have a match because of just all things considered, I would have been like, well, that's wild. Like if you're like, March 7th was my last match of 2020, and then the next one after that was April of 2021. And if you were like, yeah, you're not going to have a match for a year, and this is coming from a guy who's only missed like 2 months at a time, like due to injury. So that was crazy. But then like January happened, and then like things canceled again. It's like, oh man, I guess we're not out of all this. So there's been like a little bit, I always say, a mind shift in me, where my mindset is like, I want to keep busy, but I learned to utilize time off a little bit better because I had so many weekends off that were normally compared to wrestling. So I've found a balance pretty well now, where it's like a weekend off isn't like the end of the world anymore.
Right. So yes, and I think we'll touch on just your full body work, because I think you have been doing this for a pretty long time, and there's a lot of respect I think that comes with that. But I noticed that I listened to did a little bit of research and noticed that you had been taking up running. Are you still running a lot as much as you did? Like I think you started that right when the pandemic started, right?
Yeah, I stepped on the scale and was like at the heaviest I ever was. I was like, oh no. And then when I was trying to get back in shape, they were like talking about shutting down the gym. And it's hilarious. Like I used to always joke, I was like, if you added up all the miles that I ran, it probably wouldn't even add up to like the mile run, in high school. It's kind of like the joke I made. But it was one thing where you couldn't stop me from doing it. And it was the one thing, like when I was at the gym and if I did try to do cardio, I always like would break a sweat. So I was like, all right, if the gym's going to shut down, I'm going to find a way.
Right.
So I went and I spent like $200 on like thermal, because Minnesota.
Sure.
And I started running in the winter. That was the thing. I started like running pretty consistently in November of 2020. Luckily, it was a mild winter.
Right.
But I figured if I spent all that money, I would actually like use it. And people always joke about it and they ask me about it. And I always think back to the first time like standing in my driveway and being like, well, you got to start somewhere. And
Yeah.
like, you know, knowing what my like app tracker was, like what my pace was, and just being like, well, you got 2 miles in you. That's good. And then like, I kind of started making it like a game and trying to beat it.
Sure.
And then when it started getting nice, I really just enjoyed being outside. And
Yeah.
it definitely impacted big time when I came back for wrestling. Like I've definitely noticed a lot of changes there.
There you go. I'm glad you've been able to keep that sustained success. I think I just got about 2 miles in me. That's all I do at a time. So a run
That's
for
where I
this
was when
one.
I started.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's where I think I'll be for a bit. But speaking of like continued sustained success, you've been doing this for 17 or 18 years. Is that correct?
I always,
Wrestling?
so I'm conflicted.
Okay.
Like I, you know, it's like, okay, so I started in 04,
Yes.
but I had to take like the year due to the pandemic. And like, do I still count that or not? You know, like, so because it's like I used to always joke about guys who were like in the business for 20 years and they wrestle like once a year. And it's like, are you going to count that 1 or 2 matches? So I was always like skeptical. So I was like, I guess technically it's actually April 11th of 04 is my first match.
Right.
So I've been involved or in the mindset of wrestling since 2004. So you could say like 17 to 18 years is how long I've been doing it. So it has been a while, but you know, maybe that's just me being hard on myself on counting that year or not. You know, I'm not really sure if I should.
I would count it. I mean, it wasn't we were forced to not wrestle. You were building your brand, you were working out. Those are all preparation things you do.
Yeah.
So I would count it, but I wanted to ask, because I think that in my mind, right, who's Darin Corbin in my head, I get it back into, for me, born in 80, around you, running 89, experienced the Attitude Era, and that's when I really got into wrestling. It fell off in 2002-ish, 2002, 2003, went into high school, went to college, didn't really watch. And then I got back into it when Sting returned into a Survivor Series. So speaking of Sting, he's my favorite wrestler. I think we might talk about that later. But then I figure out there's this whole indie scene. So I was like a little bit late to the game, and maybe a little bit like you had done so much already then. So in my mind, my initial impressions of Darin Corbin are like some of your early stuff at Freelance, some of your Freelance Logan Square Auditorium stuff. And then I realized like you've done so much more before then. To me, that's great. That's cool and crazy to think about. Like the sustained success. I can't say those words together, but what do you contribute to that? Like, and you said you haven't taken a ton of time off. Like how have you been able to do so much and do it for so long?
I was told a long time ago, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was from Jerry Lynn. Jerry Lynn told me a long time ago that longevity is your best friend, because you get more opportunities to make money, you get more opportunities to be around, but you don't know what's around the corner, you know, because like if you think about it, like when I started in 04, you have just really WWE, Ring of Honor's still new. There's no plans of like an AEW for over a decade, you know, so like it's crazy. A big part of it was the style that I wrestled. I did a lot of comedy early. You know, I didn't really do too much high risk stuff comparatively. I didn't do a lot of strong style stuff when it was like big. So I wasn't really getting dropped on my head a lot. I wasn't really getting like, you know, massively like knocked out forearm. But in high school, I was a diver. So I was on the swim team. I was a diver. But when I got to wrestling, like I was kind of around the same time that like Ricochet, Seidel, guys like that were on the indies, and they can do way cooler flips than I could. So I went a whole different direction. And yeah, the only 2 times I missed were I came down wrong on my knee. I missed 2 months, kind of like stretched out didn't tear, but blew out is what they said. They were like, you strained everything. And then I broke my collarbone.
Oh shit.
But luckily they were like, you broke it in the middle and not all the way through. So it will heal. You just have to take time off. And so they were like, you pick one of the easiest bones to break. So yeah, I guess considering myself lucky, but like I always kind of learn to adapt. And like my thing is I'm more character driven than I am like
Sure.
the typical like indie back and forth style, and that's what appeals to me. And I think that's what, because even now I'm getting ready to turn 38 and I feel great. I said this when I was, I don't know, I said this when I was 34, but I felt like I was in better shape at 34 than I was at 24. And now at 38, I feel like I'm in better shape now too. So like I don't really have like a expiration on anything
Right.
yet. I'm just gonna keep going because I said as long as my body can take it and I'm having fun, and I'll just keep adapting. And that was my plan.
Nice. Did the comedic timing come easy? Were you naturally kind of funny person, or is that something you had to learn, like how to be funny in the ring, like the timing of it, when to do it, etc.?
Like this was brought up to me even before I kind of realized it, but it's funny if I were like, yeah, I think I always thought comedy was a strong point of mine or humor was a strong point of mine, but the thing is when you try and tell somebody you're funny, they try and prove you're not. I think it's always kind of like, like make me laugh type deal. Like if you go to open mic night and somebody's like, you're really, they're like, all right, make me laugh, like whatever. I was always told that wrestling, in the sense of if you're going to be a comedy guy or do comedy things, being comedic is unexpected. You don't go and tell them that you're going to have the comedy match. You intertwine it in pleasantly. And when people are like, oh, this is entertaining, the stuff they do is entertaining, but you don't tell them like this is going to be the comedic match, because then they're like, all right, impress me then, make me laugh.
Yeah.
But I always felt like it's better when it's kind of out of nowhere, or out of a genre that you don't expect, which I think is the fun part about wrestling.
Okay.
But I thought I was always creative, and I thought that I had a couple guys that I had watched, and more people were looking to be serious than actually be comedic. So I just put my own little twist on things. And over the course of that time, like I was able to pick things up and like develop them, and then learn from other people who did it to see where the timing comes. And it became like a whole new world, like a whole different style of wrestling.
Yeah. See, when most are zagging, you zigged, I guess. I think you probably saw the opportunity to be different. In that sense, and then people remember you. So like I said, I talked about like my first impression of you, and I think Chris would say the same. But then we knew you as Darin Corbin from at Freelance at the Logan Square Auditorium, and then we would see circulating online was like old DVD covers, old show posters of your time at AEW, like wearing a hockey jersey. So I gotta know what your time was like there. Like, I'm assuming that was probably maybe when you were like closer to the age of 20 or around there, right? Or I don't know. Like, when was your time there, and how was your time there?
I believe it was 2007 to 2013.
Okay.
That was the main. So the deal was, I was wrestling for IWA Mid-South. And between Mid-South and AAW at the time, I don't know if it was like there was a little bit of heat animosity.
Sure.
And I think for AAW to be able to steal Cannon and the North Star Express away, it just happened at a perfect storm. Like the timing of it happened where they were looking for something new, we were something new, and it was I want to say like a big get, like that was the deal.
Okay.
So the demand for us, we had already been in mid-low, we had already done some stuff. So we were known in Chicago area, or at least around the suburbs. So coming to AAW, the deal was it pretty much gave us stability. Let's go with that. Like the thing that was pitched to me is, we have shows every month. We want you guys to be here. This is the plan. This is what we do. And so we knew that all three of us could ride together, come down, do the shows, and be set.
Okay.
And I was there for, so the North Star Express was the tag team. Mm-hmm. So hence the North Star hockey jersey, the vintage jersey for Minnesota. And Ryan and I were a team for a long time, up until pretty much really until he stopped traveling extensively, probably like 2011-ish. And then I was teaming with Marion Fontaine for a little bit, and I was with Fontaine. So I was mostly always in a tag role of some kind at AEW.
Okay.
And I really truly feel like the deal is I started to see like kind of a changing of the scene there.
Mhm.
A lot of the guys that were like either bigger at certain areas, I felt like Chicago, AEW specifically, was able to pull West Coast, East Coast. If a match was popular there, they would bring that talent in, and you could see that at AAW.
Sure.
So you could see, like, for example, I think a good example of this would be Davey Richards and Michael Elgin at the time had like
Okay.
like a 5-star match or something at PWG. That match was done at AAW. So
Okay.
like that was what I noticed. But we've talked about my style already being comedy, and I was abruptly cut out of the tag because Ryan stopped coming. So like, do you put me like what you were doing with me? Like I kind of got I kind of got just thrown. It was like, imagine suddenly you're in a team, it's done, and now you're on your own. So
Yeah.
it was like I was kind of struggling to find like my foothold at AAW,
Okay.
and I could see like what the climate was slowly becoming, what the matches were starting to be, and I was just kind of like, it came to a time where, just like at IWA, I felt it was time to move on,
Sure.
and it wasn't a good fit anymore for me, and that was the split. And then Freelance started up slightly after it, and Freelance, like, the biggest thing is I don't know how public really a lot of it was, but Freelance was an opportunity for the guys who were not getting anything other than pre-show matches in Chicago, a chance to kind of have their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw was a lot of heart at Freelance, and I saw a lot of guys that were hungry for it. And I wanted to be the same thing when I talked to Jerry Lynn. I wanted to be a guy who helped those guys.
Yeah.
So my deal was I found a lot at Freelance that was like a place that I could go and actually be an asset. And I hadn't felt that way at AAW. So that was what led to me going that direction in Chicago.
That's awesome. Yeah, actually, that was going to be one of my next questions is like, what does freelance wrestling mean to you? So it sounds like a little bit of that mentorship role, a lot of heart. Is there any, when you think of freelance wrestling, is there anything else that comes to mind?
I always used to say, like, specifically, I was always like, freelance meant having heart. And I saw like a cool, I've seen not only me, but I've seen a lot of people come through there with the chance to kind of use it as like kind of a resurgence, like a chance to like a second win. And one of the best compliments I ever got is I had a match. It might have been with Isaiah's, but after that match, a couple people came up to me and were like, dang, we really got like workhorse Corbin out here tonight. Like, they were like, we haven't seen you go like and do that stuff for years. And like, I told them, I was like, I haven't been given that opportunity to do that stuff
right
for years. So like, it was a really cool compliment for people to be like, holy cow, he's still willing to go for this company.
Yeah, you need, right. So to be given that, you need the time, right? You need the like placement on the card. You need the guidance from the promoter, be like, hey, this is going to be like, get like, use all your stuff in here, right?
Not to like kind of do the contrast, but like my difference in the years is I remember there was a time at the end of my run at AEW, I was in like an 8-man tag and we were given 8 minutes, and like it kind of fell apart at one point. And I remember looking at it and seeing how it was set up and being like, why, like a lot of it fell back on me because I'd been at AEW for so long. And the comment was made like, why didn't you pull that together or control it? And I was like, like you clearly just threw 8 guys together for this match.
Mm-hmm.
What do you expect me to do in that time? But then at Freelance, it was, look, so-and-so has been really big here, one of our top popular guys. You have them next month. So like, you have the spotlight, you have the ball. Let's see how far we can get Corbin to go with that. That was the difference, what I was given and what I felt. So I wanted to reward that. So I had somebody who was like, let's see what you can do. Let's see what you can do here. Let's have fun with it. And that inspired me to keep putting out the matches that I was doing.
Yeah. So I tweeted earlier, and I sent out a YouTube video. This is like not I didn't tag you in it, so you might not have seen it, but it was probably your most famous moment at Freelance. So it was the pipe bomb promo, right? I rewatched it back. So there's two parts in that still got me. Like, I was sitting here making this agenda, and I still laughed during it. But I want to talk about that. So that was it's January 16, 2018, I think, or like around January 2018 ish is when that happened. So for context here, I think for like the listeners, Shug D, I think, was a champ at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. Shug D was a champ at the time. He did not make the date, and now so I won't get into why he didn't make it or anything like that. But he did not make the date. So I think maybe were you scheduled to wrestle him?
It was supposed to be a championship match. It was supposed to be me and him.
And then so Corbin went out to the ring, and that's what I want to talk about. Like, so the promo was like, what did you got? And you don't have to reveal all the secrets or give me as much as behind the curtain as you want, I guess. Don't say anything that would get you in trouble or that someone would want to hear. But like, what was the plan? Was it just like, okay, if he's not going to be here, I'm just going to do this? And then going into it, how much of it was like thought up before? How much of, I know some of it was off the top of your head, but how much of it was off the top of your head? What was like your mindset going into it?
So the funny thing was, okay, so I started at Freelance.
Yeah.
And I was kind of off and on. I would say like semi-regular. You in that time, 2017 rolls around, and at the end of 2016, a promotion I was wrestling for very consistently shut down, and a promotion that I probably had my most exposure out of, which was Paragon, they stopped running as well. So I lost two major promotions that had kept me really busy for the past at least 2 years. So the deal was, I met with one of the guys who at the time was in charge with Freelance. And I said, look, here's what I want to do. And I will always respect this to this day. I said, I want to be here all the time. This is a place that makes me feel like I could be an asset. Either tell me that this is what I want, this is what I want to do. If you're down, absolutely. But if not, you can tell me to fuck off and I'll never bother you again.
Okay.
That was my pitch. And without hesitation, basically it was, yep, no, we can do that. So that was actually a conversation. I don't know how much he cares if I do it, but that was my conversation with Matt Nix.
Okay.
That was to start coming to Freelance on a more regular basis. But at the time, one of the guys that he was working with, I was like, looks like I'm going to be a regular here. And he goes, so what do we do to get you over? And I wasn't like offended, but I kind of was like, for real? And he's like, yeah, what do we do? And I was like, give me a microphone for 5 fucking minutes. I'll get myself over. And so then we started like, initially what happened is it started a heel turn. And that's what I did there. So like it started a whole new concept, because I was trying to do like half and half of the morality character is what I was trying to do. So that was a St. Louis thing. We tried to bring it to Chicago, didn't work as well. So then this flipped the switch. Now, the thing about Freelance, this particular show, is I'm supposed to wrestle Sugar for the belt. Sugar wins the championship the previous month. Mm-hmm. And then I believe it was that week that that they found out he wouldn't be there. And in February, he was in England. So he had an opportunity. So we knew he was going to be gone for the next 2 months.
Sure.
Because of the fact that this was the advertised championship match and it was so short notice, they were like, I don't know what we're going to do. And I said, do you care if I get the microphone? And I try and hype it up in the time that he's gone. That was originally the only thing that I had my goal on. And there was a part of me that, like, as I was thinking in that week, I kind of was like, how funny would it be if because I thought I would get people really pissed. I thought it would be hilarious to do the Punk promo, but just replace John with Sugar and just tweak it just enough. And I wanted people to be like, I can't believe he's ripping off CM Punk. And like, as if I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. I
Like,
think that was kind of the reaction, right? Weren't people saying that initially?
There was so like, if you liked it, you were kind of like, oh, he did an homage.
Yeah.
If you hated it, you were like, he's just ripping off Punk.
Sure.
And as if I didn't know or was what. So like, I'll be honest, I was listening to like what he said. I listened to the promo a lot on the way down to Chicago, and I was like, how can I like flip this a little bit? But what happened is during the promo, while I had like kind of his promo going through my head, I just was kind of like, I guess I know bullet points, but I just didn't really know how to keep it all together. So I had like ideas, and I don't like to script things. I don't like to really do like plan word for word, because then it doesn't feel natural. And in this case, there was no way I would have been able to do it. But then obviously, as you know, at the end of the promo, there's the one fan who's just like constantly heckling me, and I just turned it and then like switched it. So like I went off on him. And like the funny thing is normally my mouth will get me in trouble a lot of times. Like I'll say something where I'm just like rambling off. So I was like, I'm kind of glad that I said stuff that was still slightly humorous, but like nothing that was like majorly offensive except for him. But I think when people saw that, they were like, oh, he does have a really quick wit, and he does have a really like fast on it. He's really able to think on his feet. So yeah, so after all that was said and done, like I got back to the locker room, and a lot of people were like, that was really good. Like, and some people were like, you kind of hit a lot of things on the head. And that, honestly, it wasn't really my intention. My intention was, I want people to remember that when Sugar's back, I'm still #1 contender.
Yeah.
But I just thought it would be funny. Punk in Chicago, me doing the cross. And then when I saw people get upset about it, I was like, ha, perfect. And I'm not one to shy away from that. So yeah, so all those things considered made for such short notice. Some of the best ideas I've ever come up with have been on the fly. Yeah. And that's always, or like having to switch it super quick.
But I think it was so well done that people in the middle of it started to appreciate it and like started cheering for you in the middle of it, because you were just it was just one of those moments where you were speaking truths. And I think that's some of the truths people kind of piled on, because some of those truths might have irritated people in the past. And then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I've been wanting to say this, but I haven't, because I don't want to cause a rift in the locker room. And then then Jeremy, rightfully so. I love Jeremy. He was heckling you, and you were trying to speak. So then you went off on him, which I thought it was just hilarious how you were just like, all right, screw it. And then you just like, I'm just going to try to tear into this guy. And they just started rolling. And then you were able to like, I thought it was going to fall off. You were able to catch it. And then like the entire crowd.
I thought I was going to derail it numerous times.
The entire crowd. So at the end of it, the crowd loved you. Was it, to me, it felt like that propelled you to actually beat Suge. I don't know if that's a question I'll have to ask Matt next one day. But like, I don't know. Did you feel that way too? Like you did so well at that moment that like 2 months later, 3 months later, you actually won the title.
I honestly don't remember what the plan originally was for January, to be honest with you. I don't remember. But yeah, I truly think my idea is, I think there's 2 moments that solidified me as a mainstay at Freelance, and that was one of them. And the biggest thing is like I said, I had gone from, there was a couple things that led into it as well. And like the first part was I had literally lost my two most profitable bookings. And
Yeah.
I really felt like I had nothing to lose. Cause like,
Sure.
what else? And then there was a thing where there was stuff going around, or like I would see promos and I would see stuff, and I was like, why are we like sugarcoating certain things or being so cliche? Like people would cut things on me and it was like so generic. And in
Mhm.
my mind, I was like, why is this this doesn't make sense. Like, how
Yeah.
are you supposed to get excited about something when like you could take insert person A and it's the same exact promo?
It's not personalized, right?
No. So I was
Yeah.
like, I don't think, I think there's certain things that really like bring people in. And I think it's foolish in a world of social media when people put things out there in a public eye to pretend like it doesn't exist in the world of pro wrestling. Because I feel that wrestling encompasses everything now. Social media is part of who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
So in my head, I was like, if you're going to put this out there and I'm not going to pretend, like, for example, you do an injury angle at a promotion, but next week you're wrestling another state over. I'm not going to pretend like that doesn't exist. Like,
Right.
you're fine one place, but you're injured here. I used to get suspended for, like, I would have to miss a show 1 month. I would do something so heinous and get suspended. But like, if you looked at my schedule, you already knew on my schedule I was doing this show. Like, clearly I was going to be there anyway, you know?
Sure.
So like,
it's all part of the same like gimmick almost, same
exactly. So it was
yeah.
stuff like that where I started shifting my mindset. And like, I guess part of my thing was, if I say the wrong thing and that prevents you from wanting to use me, okay, that's fine. I was never there anyway. But I truly, truly believe that, like, if you even, I mean, like, in a sense of professionalism, if we do whatever and hey, maybe it hits a nerve or strikes a chord, but we can make some money out of it, we can make some money out of it. And
Yeah.
isn't that the ultimate goal? Like, that's what I always thought. I never really tried to put my like pride too far ahead of like, yo, you say something and you want to see it, like that makes it worth it, you know? So
Mhm.
like that was always my goal, was the talk them into the building.
Yeah, no, that was 100% done. I can attest to that. It's funny too, because uh, the feud that you had ongoing with this fan, Jeremy, almost culminated in. This is a show I watched remotely and I wasn't there, but you had been so good at Freelance, and almost like you gained loyalty within that group, and it's to the point where you were wrestling Nick Gage in Chicago, different venue. But like, I was rooting for you in that match. To me, you were the baby face of that match because you were a Freelance Chicago guy, even to the point where like you had, I think you knucked up gave him the knucks, Jeremy,
Yeah.
and like called it a truce that show. So I think if you don't cut that promo and you don't do so well, you don't say, hey, I have nothing to lose. I think that culminated in like, okay, now I love this guy and I want him to actually beat Nick Gage. Nothing against Nick Gage, he's amazing, but like Corbin felt like a Freelance guy now at that moment.
Yeah.
And it's funny how that was like a little bit of an arc there.
I feel like it was like Brett in Canada. Like, it was like a weird, bizarre way, you know,
exactly.
like all the Freelance fans going against all the GCW fans. But
Right.
that match with Nick is actually one of my favorite matches. And the only thing I kind of wish it would have been at Logan Square.
Yeah.
I think that would have been, the atmosphere at Logan Square, I think would have been pretty wild.
It's that, yeah, I think for me personally, Logan and the Berwyn Eagles Club has like a classy, almost scummy charm that like you can't replicate when there's like, it's like packed to the gills in there. I love that venue. But then Logan, I think, is right there, 1A, 1B in terms of when that crowd is raucous, and it's like not super packed, but it's a right amount of people. I think that those are some of the best venues probably in indie venues in Chicago.
Logan Square is one of my favorite spots to wrestle. Has always been, because I've done numerous shows there for different promotions, but I always love Logan Square. I just think that there's something about that building when you transform it with the lighting that it looks awesome. I always dig it.
Yeah. It's kind of, yeah, it's like almost old architecture, almost like old lighting and things like that. It's funny because I think you've been very valuable for Freelance, and now going from the main scene, winning the belt, congrats on that. Then you losing it to Isaiah, and then you transition a little bit more into the tag stuff, but you still had like your feud with Kenny Sutra. I thought that was like a very underrated feud. Can you talk about like the process there, what you tried to do with that, et cetera? It was like, I think you got maybe you and Taking Home Records versus 4-Star Heroes, but like specifically you and Kenny.
Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing about that is right after or shortly after, it's always a weird thing. Like you have your championship run and then you're done. Like, do you stay in the picture? What do you do? And I'm always kind of looking for the next new thing to be like valuable on there. But a long time ago, like Bucky and Mikey had come through in the same boat as I had. Every occasion and now, here and then, maybe once every 4 months. Bucky ended up reaching out to me, and Bucky reached out about the idea of a faction, like introducing. And I thought about like what I had said in promos and where I was when I started. And I thought it would be kind of this cool like gimmick if I was able to like give back and bring in other like outsiders under my wing who had been overlooked in Chicago and were coming in. So that's how the Taken Home Records started. That's how that came to be. And I thought it was a good idea because like a lot of the shows were so packed already that I thought if we could do trios matches all the time, it would always be something different than the show had. Then Mikey ended up getting hurt. And it was kind of I don't really like the idea of throwing things together and just being like a match for the sake of, oh, now they're together or whatever. Sure. But originally the plan was with 4-Star Heroes and the originals, I kind of wanted to have it where Kenny Sutra was the neglected member of, you had like Alex Olson and Castro and like Craig Mitchell, and they were all getting opportunities, but Kenny wasn't. Right. So what I wanted to appear is Kenny gets put with the Taken Home Records because what we believe in is what Kenny's going to believe in. And we're going to take one of Freelance's own and turn it against the whole establishment.
Sure.
So rather than just having a guy fill in for Mikey, but the funny part is we had enough for when Mikey came back that in the scheme of things where like blow-offs would fall or shows would fall, the timing, and then also knowing what the pandemic was going to bring, the timing was actually perfect from the time of Mikey comes back to the turn. Then when they actually get their comeuppance and then the feud ends. And then right before the pandemic happens, the Taken Home Records get the tag belts. It was perfect timing. But convenient. I always want everyone to feel like they get elevated out of everything. That's what we should do. And I wanted it to be like, hey, when this is, I didn't want it to be just one match. And actually the funny thing is I'm never one to like attest to this, but Kenny and I had a singles and we were both sick as a dog, like for this singles match. Like I was the sickest I had ever like in 2 years. Like I felt shitty that entire week. And I was like autopilot, and he had like some stomach virus.
Oh shit.
And he had like a fever and a stomach virus. And I was just like, all right, let's get through this one. Like in my mind, I was like, it's going to a feud. I'll feel better next month. I was like, I was run down. And like some people were like, do you think you had COVID? Like, did you think you got it before like people knew? And I was like, I'm not one to speculate, but all I know is I was sick. Okay. And like, so the idea like of that match and what we did being able to be fine was good. But my hope was the Taken Home Records would go off to do other things, showing what we did. Kenny would continue to show what he did. And like, I think with the pandemic, he just hasn't been around as much. Sure. But like Taking Home Wreckers got the tag belts out of it. But like that feud, I definitely thought we had some fun matches in there, you know.
Yeah.
And again, like the intertwining, I thought that street fight with the 4-star heroes and everything was great. I thought that was good.
But yeah, I think it was a really underrated feud at the time. I think there might have been some stuff going on at the top of the card, but I was like, even on our show recaps, we made sure to talk about that. The name Taking Home Wreckers, right, inspired by Freelance's Home, right? You know, you twisted that around.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So like Freelance's home, and then we were gonna make it our home. So we were like, I can't remember exactly. We talked about it like I think it was last month. We were like, how did it come in? And I can't remember if it was like a pun, but it was based on that. It was based on the Freelance's home. And we were like, I don't remember if maybe it was one of the deals with streaming and making sure that we don't go over on the stream for IWTV. So we were like, take it home. And we were gonna wreck the, you know, and then Minnesota Home Wrecking Crew and like, you know, like stuff like that. And like,
Okay.
you know, there were, because that was like, so it just became like this weird combination. But we were like, it's one of those names that when you say it more, it like works. But then when you have to stop and think about it, you're like, that is a real weird name. And I'm a huge fan of like odd names for factions. So like it just stuck. I was super stoked by it. So I'm glad that it worked.
Yeah, no, it's synonymous now. I think probably, I think, yeah, maybe shorten it to like Home Wreckers or something like that. But then it's almost has like a bad connotation too. If you're a home wrecker, you don't want to be.
Yeah, because I think the take it home part is just enough smarky enough, you know. So like I think that's where the appeal comes in.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about that other stuff because I feel like to me, and this you could take this as me kissing your ass, whatever. That's fine. But I feel like to me, like no matter where you are in the card, you have meaningful feuds. You have feuds with story, and you can go from main eventing to having a title run, then to back into the tag scene. And I feel like everything you do has substance. We put out a tweet maybe a month ago, and I want to actually, if I can get to it, I want to write an article on this. But the tweet was, if so far, who would you say would be in your Freelance Hall of Fame? So the answers that were coming, right? So we had a lot of people chiming on this. The answers that were coming in were obviously Kylie, of course, well-deserving. Mm-hmm. Everyone that was said was well-deserving. Kylie, your Isaiah, your GPA. Those were probably the three most popular. And then to me, I was like, I feel like there's people missing. Like, I feel like an all you Ethan Page for sure. And then like, to me, I was like, what in my head, I was like, well, like, no, like, what about Darin Corbin? Like you talk about consistency and you talk about meaningfulness over like the time where I feel like Freelance really got to the point where they were packing the building. You were a huge role player in that. And I think it was back, we had someone on whose name I won't say because he wanted to keep it private, but involved in Freelance. And we asked him and you were on his list. So, and I'm not saying like I don't want you to be braggadocious anyway. So I'm not going to direct that question to you, but to me, you would be in the Freelance Wrestling Hall of Fame if there were to be one. Because you were maybe a name that came sooner, but you've had a really, really good resume. Do you feel like at Freelance sometimes you're overlooked?
Honestly, at Freelance, I don't have I think overlooked, not really.
Okay.
But I think I take it as a compliment that I can still surprise people.
Yeah.
I think is the best way. I truly believe that if coming out of in the end of 2022, you could put me in a feud for the main, any championship, and I would still deliver.
Yeah,
and
I would agree.
The funny thing is I love the fact, this is something that I've always appreciated and always tried to focus on and always try and be me on. But if I can go in there and I can play my range of characters and you're like, he's good in everything he does, that's my goal. And I can flip a switch. And right now, I truly believe that Freelance needs what Bucky and I bring to that tag division. And if a strong tag division comes out of Freelance as with us as the core, I'm going to feel like we've accomplished something. We're bringing something better to Freelance that it might have been lacking before. When I was champion, like that was the thing, like someday down the road, I will be given a microphone again to say something, say my piece, and I'll put myself back where I need to go. And there's a couple matches that have yet to either have happened, or rematches that have yet to have happened. But I never feel really like overlooked, because I'm always feeling that I'm building something. Like, I don't feel like I'm in a lot of throwaway matches. I always used to joke, like, the scramble was always like a throwaway. And then I got so upset when Freelance got the scramble over, where people were excited to see the holy shit scramble. It's like, this is a match that you put the guys in who ride with everybody, and they're like, I forgot you were coming. And then at Freelance, everyone's like, scramble! I'm like, stop! Because then it's like, this is what I'm doing tonight, you know? But otherwise, like, the thing is I've always felt that I enjoy the challenge of, I appreciated a lot of, I guess, undercard guys. And there were certain things when I was watching the Attitude Era, when I was watching WCW, even ECW, that sometimes the championship matches were not the thing that I was intrigued about. It was always these undercard feuds that I thought carried shows. And I was a big fan of like Intercontinental title matches, US title matches, because I felt there was more freedom to build off of those.
Yeah.
And I am totally fine feeling fulfilled, filling a role that I always looked at companies and said, what do they not have? Do they not have this role? Do they not have this? Do they not have somebody for the tag? And if I can add to that, I absolutely love it. But I do think, not in a bad way, but I think sometimes people forget what I'm capable of. But the best compliment is when they're like, holy cow, I forgot that Corbin, like, he can do that. And it's like, yep, and I'll prove you wrong again.
Yeah, no, it was very well said. I think you can always turn that on if you need to. But speaking of building a tag division, it is you guys, and then there are some very young teams. One of those teams has been talking a lot of shit lately. Okay, we had if you're listening to this, it was probably last week's episode. You can go back and listen to that. But it's a team.
I bet I could guess who it is.
You guys were mentioned a couple times. It was a team called Pick and Pop. So I know they stole belts, right? Stealing is bad. We don't condone stealing. Are they even worth your time at this point? Do you feel like they're beneath you? Are they just an annoyance? What's your impression of them right now and their antics?
Well, stealing's annoying. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Now, I will never say this. You have Pick and Pop, and then you also have the Bang Bros. And I will not say that they are beneath us in any way, that they're not worth our time, because they have actually gotten our undivided attention with all the stuff of stealing our belts. Now, we have wrestled both the Bang Bros. We've wrestled Pick and Pop. The thing about Pick and Pop is I have this weird thing that they feel like that they can outsmart the Take It Home Wreckers. I think they want to be the most hated people in the tag division. And I think they want to be like the crafty, like, they sneak attack, they steal our stuff.
Yeah. But guerrilla tactics.
Exactly. When you combine myself, Bucky, and Mikey, you got a long way to go with all that experience to kind of fit in. And I'm not saying that I truly believe, and I bet if they listen to this, they will agree, but they will not acknowledge it. But they look up to us because we paved the way for them to come in. Right. I know both of them look up to us. I know right now they're thinking, he's probably right. And my words are true, and they can't deny that. So in my head, I am not going to take anything away from what they do. And I remember watching Pick and Pop versus the Bang Bros. I remember watching that crazy spine buster, double pickup spine buster. I remember thinking, like, these two teams are going to be real good someday. Not 2-year title reign, Take It Home Wreckers good, right? But someday they'll get there. So, they can sit and talk all the shit they want, but the truth is they aren't the champions, no matter how much they claim to be with our championship belts.
No, you make a lot of great points. I think in terms of experience, you definitely got them beat. That's probably why they may have resorted to certain tactics. I think that's a little bit of Pick and Pop style. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see what happens. Hopefully that leads into something entertaining for people like me. There's one more question I got before we kind of get into the guilty pleasure stuff. The Side to Side by Ariana Grande. Every time I hear that song, you pop into my head. I don't know if that's good or bad, but like, why did you use that song? Why have you used that song? I just need to know.
It's actually kind of funny. So I'm thinking about I'm normally a pretty open book, and I think she'll be okay with this. But so my ex-wife is actually still really.
I thought you
really
meant Ariana, but she'll be okay
no,
with
I mean if she's listening and wants to be my ex-wife, but no, my ex-wife, who's still a really good friend of mine, we're still really good friends, like best friends. She was a big fan of that song, and I remember it was right around the time I was coming to start kind of a new leaf in freelance. That's where I was like, look, give me the ball, let me run with it, let me do this. That was the start of when I was being more full-time. And they were like, well, what song do you want to use? And I was like, sometimes a change in music can always help. And I thought about it, and she was watching the stream for freelance, and I was like, so that was the song that she really liked. And so I did it because I knew she would enjoy it.
Okay.
So the funny thing was she was at home watching the stream, and like I remember her tweeting and being like, he's coming to area. So like, and then eventually it's just one of those things where it just sticks after so long.
It's so stuck. It's so stuck.
That was the origin of it. I needed something to change up a little bit. And I'm always I have this thing where I'm like, if I can make something synonymous, a song synonymous with me or whatever, I love it. And that just happened to work.
Do you use that elsewhere or no?
Only freelance.
Only freelance.
Only freelance. That's my freelance music.
What is your vibe and other, like, what is the entrance theme and other promotions?
The one I use consistently, like if people are like, what's your main theme? It's called Radar by the Danger Twins. And the reason behind that is because that was the theme song of Paragon Pro Wrestling. That was the entrance video. And Paragon, I feel, is where I did some of my best storyline stuff.
Sure.
And where a lot of people got to know me. So I use Danger Twins as an homage to that. Like it's a part of my like past. The main one where a lot of people who are very familiar with WrestlePalooza and First Wrestling, I use a version of, it's actually just a 1.5 times slowed down version of Hello by Adele. And when I turned and ended the North Star Express, I wanted a song that wasn't wrestling. I didn't want like a rap song. I didn't want something that was like wrestling. And for some reason, I don't remember. I know I was in a Chili's discussing it. And I can't remember what we were trying to think of. And I don't remember why, but at the time, I just was not a fan of Adele myself. I think it was when Set Fire to the Rain came out. And I was like,
it's probably overplayed on the radio or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Hello played, and I was like, I think it could work. So I jokingly like kind of was like, yeah, let's try this. Let's do Hello. I don't even like it. And then my buddy modified the song, edited, closed it down, and then played it. And I was like, oh, this is good. But the thing is I only use it there. And people will ask me, they'll be like, are you coming out to Adele? And I say no. And part of it is I won't come out to it if I don't trust the sound people to play the right song. I never, because that happens a lot more frequently in indie wrestling than you'd assume.
Sure.
And then the other thing is the way that I am there, like how I am at freelance, is kind of different than other places.
Okay.
And so I say, if you want that version of Darin Corbin, I can do that. But I'm not going to just come out to it just for the sake of it. And so Danger Twins is normally the one I use.
Okay.
Freelance is specific with Ariana. So
I should see Ariana Grande in my head when that song comes on, and then I see you. So
you're welcome.
Is that a net win or a net loss? I don't know.
I mean, that's a pretty tall, like, I mean, because that's tough. That's I mean, I'd probably be thinking about Ariana on that.
All right, I got a couple things to wrap up here. So I'm assuming you're a fan of Sting. Is that true?
I am. Yeah.
Is he your favorite of all time?
Not favorite of all time. I
Okay.
was a little Stinger though. I
Okay.
think it was first or second grade. I actually dressed up as Sting for Halloween. I got to do an in-ring promo with Sting not long ago, and that was super like surreal.
How is he? Did you get to meet him and stuff? Like, how is he?
Just briefly right before he was
Okay.
basically doing his thing where he goes out and says it's showtime.
Okay.
I was in a faction. We interrupted. I interrupted Sting. I was the champion at the time, and then he actually made the match right away to kick off the show. So it ended up being me and Eric Cannon for this championship. It was at Heavy on Wrestling.
Okay.
But to be in the same ring and get to do a back and forth with Sting was pretty cool.
That's really cool. He's my favorite of all time. I was doing some research and I saw you mention him. So I feel like I had to comment on that.
His actually my favorite match. When people always ask me, what is your favorite match of all time? It is Sting and Rick Rude for the US title, where Sting gets his leg clipped out by Luger. And he has to come back in the ambulance and he hobbles into the building.
Yes.
And he wrestles Rude, because I, as a kid, watched that and got so into it. And there's something about the drama, the intrigue, all the elements of story that go into it. And the match itself is so good. And the stuff that I didn't realize, and when I watch it now, like obviously Rude is like brilliant on like being such a good heel, and like little things on the cell, little things on the knee. And when it finally happens, like to be a kid and be like watching somebody who's like probably your ultimate, like in that promotion, your ultimate hero, like I was ultimately so upset with Luger and Rude. And I remember being so like, I wasn't crying that mad, but I was like, oh, I just wanted to see them get like, I wanted Sting to get revenge so bad. And I remember jumping up and down on like a ottoman when he was like trying to get back in the building when he took the ambulance back. I thought that was so cool. But that is my favorite match of all time personally, and it involves Sting.
That's so cool. I need to rewatch that back. I think I had like a VHS that I just played to death of all Sting's great. Like I must have watched this thing like 80 times. Like you just get home from school and you watch the same thing. You know, you have those streaks where you're just like watching the same thing every day. Like a Sting VHS is one of those for me.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, it's up in my filming room right now. I have the same one.
It had a really multicolored.
Yes.
I watched the fuck out of that.
I have VHS. Sting. I think I have the Vader one, the Cactus one, and I think there's like a Savage one that came out.
There's
later.
a Macho Man one. Yeah.
I have all those. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And you know, I feel like you're a Stinger fan if you've been him for Halloween because of his look. I've been in for Halloween twice. One as a full-grown adult, one as a kid. But he's just got that look that you just want to portray that and be really cool. That's so great. I want your Madden season. What the fuck is going on there? I just see you tweeting out these random names and this random shit. Can you fill us in on that?
Okay, so like it's so funny because Madden 06 is the last Madden stuff that it's the last Madden game that I liked because I could take a franchise, move them, build them up from the ground up, and had an understanding of it. And like I always put my rules and regulations out, but like my thing was I always tried to make dynasties. I liked working a team from the ground up.
Sure.
And I just like to have like against myself. I get really mad at certain video games.
Same.
I've broken a lot of controllers, and now that PS2 is a little harder to find, I got to make sure that I don't break any of those controllers.
That's what you're playing this on PS2?
Yeah, I broke out my PS2 and
interesting.
I started, and this is something I used to do all the time. I build up a team, but eventually you get to a point where your team's really good, and then you get annoyed. So like, or it just gets complacent.
Right.
So then I started trying to build up a new team. And then when I started doing the under 30, it was fun because then I loved having to deal with a rebuilding year. I always thought that was fun. But I feel like I play the game like it's a Key and Peele sketch, you know, like the East versus West and the weird names.
Yes.
And I don't want to do Twitch not because I don't think, but it's just, I don't want to do Twitch because I don't think this is different enough. And I don't want to try and find out how to motion capture a PS2 and bring it through. So
Okay.
like me live tweeting it is fun. And I get a kick out of when people like follow along. And I have fans now that come up to me at wrestling shows and are like, the most recent one that was great was somebody who was like, I had two fans that one was one came up to me and said, you know, I really hope that the Red Snappers make it to the Super Bowl for a third straight year, but I know if they do, that you move on to a different team, and I really enjoyed you building them up. So that was funny. And then I had one where I had a defensive tackle named Pancakes O'Neal, and due to salary cap, I had to unfortunately let him go. He was 29, so he would only last another year on my team.
Right.
Can't have anybody over 30.
Okay.
And somebody came up to me, bought an 8x10, and goes, you know, I'm really sorry you had to let Pancakes go, but I'm kind of rooting for him if he goes to a different team. And like, I just thought it was hilarious that like certain people like would follow and go for it. So
Yeah.
now that I'm in the trying to build up this new team, it's funny. It's just the second season, but it's a slow process. So I enjoy it. Now it gives me a fun little interaction with people on something that I've always liked to do. So
yeah, no, I just thought it was a unique string of tweets that came through. The names, of course. If people haven't seen those Key and Peele sketches, you need to go watch them immediately. They're so funny.
so good.
And then the last, I have one fan question, but first I want to ask. I kind of worked the other fan questions into the questions that I asked, but I have a specific one that I just don't know what it means. It might be a different promotion, but first I want to ask about Snapchat. So I know that's a video series you've been doing for a while. So just take me through the what, why, the who, what, when, where, why, and the creative process, and like and what you've been able to do with that.
So the funny thing was, is when I started it, the thought was, again, I was looking at, you know, it's crazy to think back how long I've been doing it for, you know, because like,
Yeah.
So I'm originally, I graduated college with I originally went to college for TV production. And I graduated with a film major and a minor in mass comm. And I like video editing. I worked at a TV station when I was a kid. I really enjoyed video editing. It's a creative outlet for me.
Sure.
So when I started doing Snapchat, honestly, my thought on it was way deeper than it conveyed. Because like, I wanted it to be kind of a film noir style where it is the voice in your head or the like devil on your shoulder who is kind of the doubt that like every wrestler would deal with.
Okay.
You know, for example, you're always like kind of in a battle with yourself. The consultant always was supposed to fill that role.
Okay.
That's how it started. Then as it went, I kind of tried to insert a little bit more comedy into it. And then I realized that's my strong point. I realized that in order to do it, Snapchat, what I do, even no matter if I'm a dastardly heel or whatever, comedy is the way to go. And probably into the first 10 episodes, I also learned it was an interesting way to hype up upcoming shows. So
Yeah,
each weekend
sure.
I was kind of like, what could I talk about? And then I would get an idea, and then it was always like a fun creative challenge. Now, I'm on coming up on Sunday will be episode 216. So I've been at 200 plus episodes, and they're
Congrats on
weekly.
that.
You know, so like with the exception of a couple, I had to take a little break off because I had a computer hardware failure, a couple dates that I just switched, you know, just to, there was a couple big events I just made sure to take time off on.
Sure.
During the pandemic, it at least allowed me to have a creative outlet to still produce things,
Yep.
which was great. So with that said, it's really been a consistent thing for me. And now the consultant has kind of been able to take on like a role for themselves, and it switched. Originally it was supposed to be that was the more serious character, but now the consultant kind of is reminiscent of those promoters or those bosses that you have where you're like, how did you fall into this success? Like, I don't know how a person like you would be successful, but somehow you managed to like make things work. You always land on your feet. That is what it became. And for me, I do really enjoy when people enjoy the product that I put out.
Yeah.
And it's been definitely a lot of fun to do. And so, for example, each week I can kind of be like, all right, what should I talk about? Or what do I have? And sometimes some of my better ideas have come where I'm like, gosh, I don't even know. What am I going to talk about this time? But Snapchat has been one of my more consistent and more fulfilling because I feel like I get to apply something that I really love to do with the video editing.
Yeah.
And I get to make something unique. And
You have the
what I like.
consistency. Yeah, the channel has grown. It's got like, I feel like for a one-man operation, it has like really good numbers. So I think that a lot of that is consistency. That's what we try to preach here at Two Heels in the Face as well. We always try to like do something every week. There is one question from Alex McCarthy that I didn't get to weave in. He said, I don't know who this person is, but you could probably answer it. What is your strategy for your match against Crotch? I don't know who that is.
So this would have been a little bit before your time, but when I was in AAW, Matt Crotch Mayday was a feud of mine that I had. He was one of the AAW like students. And long time ago, we had a feud. And I guess the funny thing is I have an honest, I'm trying to think, I'm thinking ahead because I don't want to be like, I haven't seen Crotch in a long time. It sounds different, comes across out of context weird. But we used to have a feud back in probably 2010, maybe 2010, long time ago. And I'm going back to SCW in the Quad Cities for the first time in years. So I'm going to see a lot of people that I haven't seen for a while. And they just announced that the match will be me versus Crotch.
Okay.
And it'll be interesting because we're both two totally different wrestlers than the last time that we met.
Yeah.
And before we were tag specialists, and now we're mostly broken off into singles. But it'll be very interesting to see how much stays the same and how much changes up. So it's like an old feud, old rivalry renewed.
Nice. Well, good luck with that. That's all I have in terms of questions. Appreciate your presence. Appreciate all the stories and the insights that you've given. Is there anything else that you'd want to, I guess you have the floor if there's anything else you'd want to say to, where we can find you or just anything in general about upcoming matches? Oh, yeah. So like a lot of times what I do is I do have a schedule that I post a lot on my fan page. That's the biggest thing. But the one that I always try and tell people is if they like what they generally see for a little bit more of getting to know me, I have a Patreon. And generally the pitch that I always pull for a lot of people is I have 7 different tiers on it, but the $3 and anything above, you get exclusive video content. And I post something every single day. I always post something new every day on my Patreon, whether it's a video, whether it's like a gift giveaway or an opportunity. I always do it. So like, I actually, today, what I ended up posting would be the recap of the weekend where I do, it's called Corbin Center, and it's in the sense of like the Sports Center highlight. I see. And I talk about the show and like how that went and everything. And it's not really like I pull back the curtain, but I do a lot of stuff with Q&As with some of my Patreons. They're able to submit questions throughout the month. And then what I do is I answer those questions. And now I'm getting to the stage where I have a great group. I have a great community there. And one of my favorite things that they do is they start to ask me non-wrestling related questions. And it's a blast. It's really fun. Nice. So I always suggest my Patreon, not so much. What I try and always tell people is I'm not trying to here to shill it. But if you want to know more about what I'm going to be doing, because I break news on all upcoming shows as well. But I have a tier that's just $3, and that just gets you the exclusive content. But anything above that would also as well. So cool. That's my biggest pitch. And then of course I'm on Twitter and Instagram, just at Darin Corbin. And I just started the TikTok, but I don't know how far into that cesspool I'll get, but we'll find out. That's great. Hey man, I want to say I appreciate you. I think this conversation is long overdue. I can't wait to see what you do at Freelance. upcoming. I mean, I think in doing some research, there were some names being thrown around. I feel like there's still so many people you haven't wrestled on that roster. So I just want to say, and I speak for Chris as well at Two Heels in a Face, that we appreciate you, everything you've done in the freelance ring, outside of it, but particularly in it as well. And like, yeah, we're excited to just see you continue doing what you do, man. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right.